good friend of mine.
So what does the Second Amendment say, though? It doesn't say people in the militia. What does it say?
Let's see. Let's see if I can remember.
I gotta memorize. So go ahead.
All right. A well-regulated militia.
Mr. Trump, Congress, the Senate, and all elected
Being necessary to the security of the people's rights.
No, being necessary to the security of a free state.
Of the free state, and the rights to bear arms should not be infringed.
No, the right of the people to keep and bear
arms shall not be infringed. God, man, you really had to walk me through that. In my defense, I looked this up at 3 in the morning just to get the wording right.
What's up, guys? Nuance Bro, check it in. We're here in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives protest. Let's go talk to people, see what's going on. So why are we out here today?
I'm out here to rally for gun reform, and hopefully we can make a change.
Sure. And what's the sign here? What does it mean?
My sign says, as a Hispanic girl, I hope to have as many rights as a gun.
Sure. And like, what rights are those, do you feel like?
I feel like Donald Trump, he just feels like guns shouldn't have like any type of changes, and he feels like guns, like the Second Amendment is basically like good as it is. But yeah, the way he looks at Hispanics is that we're criminals and we're drug dealers and like we're just bad people, but really it's the guns that are making America bad.
Sure. But like, what rights, you said rights specifically, like what rights do you feel like guns have that you as a Hispanic woman don't have, that you would want?
I feel like guns have the right to stay in this country. Like, they protect guns in this country. They don't protect my people in this country. They want my people to be deported.
You think he wants all Hispanics deported?
Well, that's the way he makes it seem.
I think he was talking about like illegal immigrants specifically.
Well, he probably means it like that, but the way he says it is us as a whole, and that's...
He's not the best at speaking, right?
Yeah.
Like, as far as guns go, so, you know, a lot of states, they have things like waiting periods, registration, background checks. You can't carry them in most, like, right now in D.C., 99.99% of people here can't carry a gun here. So, I mean, would you like to be banned from public places?
No, I wouldn't want to be banned from public places.
You don't want the same rights as a gun, right?
No. What?
Because you said you want the same rights as, like, a gun, right?
Yeah, by the fact that they want the guns here in this country. They don't want my people here in this country. They want to deport us.
Yeah, but I mean, it comes with all these other sort of stipulations of you can't take it out in public, you have to store it in this way, we'll criminalize it if you do and we'll put you in jail. You got magazine capacity limits, you have background checks, registration, all these kind of things. Would you like to live under that sort of system as, like, would you like to be treated as a person that way?
No, I guess not.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
You shouldn't be able to walk into a Walmart and buy a gun.
Why not?
Where's the background checks on that?
Well, they have background checks at Walmart if you try to buy a gun there.
And you can buy guns that can kill children in schools.
Well, all guns can kill anything. It's about how you use it, right?
Yeah, it is about how you use it.
Thank you. So why are we out here today?
Because enough is enough, really. 17 people is too many to die, but I mean, there's a school full of elementary kids who died years ago. I mean, this is just enough. It's common sense.
What's common sense?
Gun laws are common sense. The idea that there are guns available to be bought at a gun show with no background checks, minimal invasion. There's minimal limits to getting guns in the United States, and the restrictions are causing people to die, and it's just not enough what we're doing anymore. We need more.
And what do you feel like is the evidence that these, like, less restrictions lead to more murders, for example?
I mean, many of the guns that are used in school shootings are bought legally, and the idea that they're being able to be purchased with no mental health records being checked, no criminal background checks, minimal waiting periods, it's just not enough anymore.
So do you feel like the states that have stricter gun laws, for example, have less of a murder rate than the states that have less strict gun laws?
I can't honestly say that because I don't know that statistic off the top of my head. I would say that that's a thing that would make sense in my head. I'd say that's probably what the case, but...
It's not the case.
It's not. I didn't know that.
Sure. So, I mean, but like, what kind of specific gun laws would you like to see enacted?
What kind of gun laws would I like to see enacted? That's a good question. I think that 18 is too young to be able to buy a gun. If you're not old enough to drink, then you shouldn't be old enough to buy a gun.
It's old enough to serve in the military, right?
18 is, and maybe that's something that we should look at too. But what I am thinking is there needs to be a longer waiting period to purchase a gun. I mean, if people who are are trying to do violence aren't patient people. You know, I mean, a mandatory waiting period of a few months is not an unreasonable thing if you're actually a collector of guns and you're trying to get something for a hobby. Whereas,
do you think most people are getting it as a hobby thing, or what about self-defense? Like, let's say a woman has a stalker and she wants to protect herself. There's been many cases where waiting periods have.
Who you're interviewing me with?
So why are we out here today?
Our lives and the lives of our children.
And what are we trying to achieve?
I want to say no, never again have a gun. I'm sorry, I'm being inarticulate right now. It's
You gotta get into the role.
yeah, I know. I want gun control, no more gun violence ever.
So, but how do we achieve that?
At this, all I can say is that we need to vote the politicians out who don't support gun control.
Like, what kind of gun control would you like to see specifically?
Right now, assault weapon ban, 21 for guns, no more high capacity tax bullets to hell.
Do you feel like that would be constitutional, though, to specifically tax bullets in order to dissuade people from buying them?
Yes, it's not. I'm not sure, but I don't think that falls under the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, to my understanding, was a right to bear arms only when there was the situation calls for it, as in a militia-like situation. You can't take guns when they are part of the militia, but in any other circumstance, they can be taken. And bullet prohibition, bullets. Hey.
Yeah, but I mean, the Supreme Court already ruled it. It said the Second Amendment's an individual right and it protects things. You had the Heller decision in 2008 and the McDonald decision in 2010. So I mean, it's already settled law in that sense. So I don't know if it would, be constitutional under that sort of jurisprudence.
To my knowledge, the ruling did not extend to bullets. So I don't know if it is, but I think it's worth
logically.
This is the logic that has been argued amongst guns has been insane. So I say it's worth a shot.
And you have these signs here. What are these signs?
My concept is I started to think about the victims of gun shootings specifically, since I remembered them. So I remember Columbine was the first one, and Red Lake, and then of course Sandy Hook, Stoneman Douglas, and Virginia Tech.
So, like Columbine, for example, what do you think could have been done to stop something like that?
Columbine, I've always, the thing is that I think if the assault weapon ban had been in effect then.
It was in effect then.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, between 1994 and 2004 was the assault weapons ban. This was in 1999. So basically in the middle of it.
I can't answer that, but my understanding is gun locks. Guns should not have been.
Yeah, but we need specific laws for like what could like you said 21, for example, as a age thing, right? So what would you, like 18 is the age of emancipation, you're a legal adult. So what would you say to people who are like single mothers out there, they're living on their own, but they can't buy a gun until they're 21 to protect themselves and their children? What would you say to them?
I don't know. I don't know.
By the way, guys, I want to thank all my supporters on Patreon who made this trip possible. If you guys want to support this trip and others like it in the future, please go to patreon.com/nuancebro to support this channel. Thank you guys so much. So why are we out here today?
You want me to speak? Okay, so we're out here for the March of Our Lives in order to push for better gun regulations and laws. I know sometimes when we talk about policy, it sounds like a lot of just mumbo jumbo, but it's more about people. These are people and children dying, and we're not doing anything about it.
So what should we do?
I do think a lot of it does have to do with the people in power. Policy is where the change starts. And I don't have that power to enact that. So we need our politicians to do what they need to do for us. They represent us, so they need to change.
Sure, but what would you like to see specifically from those politicians?
Specifically?
Wow. I think
Maybe policy geared towards not just one demographic, but all of them.
What do you mean?
An emphasis on specifically intersectionality.
What is that? What do you mean, like, policy-wise, what do you mean? Like, for guns, or like, how would you achieve that?
Definitely for guns, because the thing is, do you want to speak on this more?
you got it.
Oh, no, you can.
Okay, we forget that, okay, like when you're putting down Black Lives Matter, you're putting down black men being shot in the streets. You're also forgetting that, you know, these people who do have guns, they end up hurting people in school children in our school. So it doesn't matter, but we want to make sure the policy is broad and encompassing, because sometimes the law can be codified in a way that only protects certain groups of people.
So, like, what kind of policy specifically?
I guess policy, like really, I guess going into the depths of maybe when guns can be used, maybe at what age, and I don't know if there's reasons or how extensive the background check can be, if that makes sense. Because I do think, like, I don't know if we can get rid of guns completely. That's not really our scenario in the context of our country. But I do think that, like, if we can be very specific in who gets to have those guns, it could put down a lot of the stuff that we're going through.
Sure, like how would you craft that? Like, who shouldn't, who should, and in what way would you go about that?
Who should and who shouldn't. I do think they mentioned, I was reading about, like, the 21 age policy would be good.
You support raising the age limit to buy all guns to 21, for example?
Yeah, I think that would help tremendously. I feel like right now it's a little bit easy to attain a gun for no reason. I know they're talking about the difference. I want
to focus on the 21 thing, for example, because 18 is the age of emancipation, right? That's technically when you're a legal adult. So what about a lot of these women who, like, they're not living at home with their parents might even kick them out, and they're single mothers and they're living at home, but they can't buy a gun until they're 21. How can they protect their kids and their family?
I guess in that scenario, that's why I was kind of wondering, like, if there was a way to implement, like, background checks and who they're getting it and really selecting. In that case, somebody like that may need a gun. But for somebody who's just going out to buy it and they don't, I don't know, like, they can just buy it and go and they don't really have to go through much to get that gun, then it becomes problematic, because then you don't know what they're going to end up doing. Some people are harmless, fair enough, but there are too many cases where they're not harmless and people are...
You don't support the 21 age, like, just broad sort of law?
I guess so. But I mean, if they were to put the 21 age stipulation, there needs to be something following up with that. Like, what are the scenarios? What are the conditions? Because I think sometimes when you make the law too general, then it becomes difficult.
Well, then isn't that sort of like, it starts getting a little more like subjective, like who gets to determine that? And doesn't that lead itself to possibly discrimination by, you know, like the police you were talking about, if they're the ones determining that? You know, back in the day, Martin Luther King applied for a concealed carry permit in Alabama, and, you know, the conditions were you have to have good cause and good moral character. I don't think anyone would say he didn't have good moral character or good cause. He was being threatened by, you know, Klan members all the time, but they denied him because they were racist officers. So why would we want to put the power in the hands of police for something like that? Wouldn't we want to, you know, create a scenario that's more objective and people can all, like, regardless of race, gender, whatever, people could just kind of get it?
I see what you're saying. I really do think that's difficult, but I feel like sometimes what I'm reading is just like, when we make it objective, then it kind of lets people fall through the cracks. But then also, then if you're making it too detailed, then people are getting, like, discriminated against. But I don't know, if we're looking at the way people are being slaughtered in our schools and our universities, then I do think we do need some type of passing gate. I don't know what the standard should be per se, but there does need to be a standard, and it does need to be specific. And I don't know if it should require race or gender, but I do think it has to be more of, like, what is the intent? What have they done? What has that specific person done in their past life? do they have a criminal record? Do they not? Like, things more in that direction rather than like, oh, like she's a woman, she's young, and she doesn't have anyone. But more, how has she been a good citizen, maybe to the U.S. or just in her daily life type of thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Do you know what the first gun control laws in this country were?
No, but I just learned it.
They were to prevent slaves from owning them, and then later on, after they were emancipated, the first gun control laws after that were to prevent freed blacks from owning guns. So I guess one of my concerns is that the history of gun control has been one about people control. Doesn't that concern you that, you know, even today, where do you see the strictest gun laws? It's always in the inner city where there's higher amounts of like blacks, Latinos, and things like that. Doesn't that concern you at all?
I do think it does concern me for sure. I think that's why it's kind of like hard to like make sure that policy truly is representative of the country we live in. At the same time, it's kind of like unfortunate that like sometimes when you implement conditions to help people, it ends up being reversed to hurt others. So that's definitely a difficult one, but I do also think it is the type of politicians we have. I don't know, like when I think about it, I don't really think all of us are represented in our government properly. I definitely don't feel represented by my president, and that's a huge issue. So I definitely see what you're saying. There's validity.
Some people say, like, you know, civilians shouldn't have guns and only, you know, the government should have guns. Do you trust someone like Donald Trump having all the guns and the people not?
No, absolutely not.
So why are you out here today?
We're showing the other side.
And what is that?
That all these people out here are blaming guns for acts of evil, and a gun is just a tool. It's an inanimate object like a hammer or, you know, a knife or a rental truck. So in the wrong hands, anything can be used for evil.
Sure, and isn't that what they're saying? They say, well, these tools are pretty dangerous when they're in the hands of bad people. If we limit the tools' availability to those bad people, less of these bad things will happen.
You're not going to limit the tools. You're not going to confiscate all the guns in America. It's just not.
I don't think anyone's saying all the guns, but if you make it harder, you could reduce the amount of that these bad things happen, right?
The Virginia Tech shooter used a handgun.
Yeah, but so they would say limit handguns as well. Do more
okay, so
because
where,
like in his case they did that. Well, I guess they would say, let's just go down that road and try to limit and make these things less, you know, happen less often, and then we'll have that argument when we get there, right?
All right, so we're going to ban trucks?
I don't know if they would say ban trucks, no.
Okay, well, you know, just in last October, whatever it was, a guy in the Home Depot rental truck killed those people in New York. You know about the Oklahoma City federal building bombing, but it was a truck full of fertilizer. So we're going to ban those?
No, but then, I mean, the thing is, like, let's say deal with the gun issue, for example. This is sort of like a whataboutism sort of argument, right? But why can't we do, like, why would we just say, well, what about this, what about that? I mean, do you want to limit those as well, or?
No, I want free people to have a choice.
Sure, but I mean, the thing is, if that choice leads to more deaths or more murder, why wouldn't you want to limit those for like bad people? Like, why not universal background checks, for example?
You know, it's amazing that a lot of these people that commit these horrible acts of evil have passed background checks.
Sure, but why not, like, for example, one of the things is we don't let doctors who say people are mentally ill. A lot of these people had backgrounds where the doctor said these people are mentally ill and they take medication, blah, blah, blah. Why don't we include those records in the background checks? And why don't we do universal background checks so there's no, you know, loophole where people can do private?
We should include those records in the background checks. And in Maryland, the state I live, they actually do not report those statistics to the FBI. So I could be in Maryland. I could have had a mental health issue in my past, and I could clear the federal background check. I don't think that's right.
So you believe in expanding that, and you also believe in universal background checks?
I believe that we should have states should report the mentally ill, like most of the states do it. I mean, 38 states report this to the feds. Maryland, the state I live in, doesn't, and I think they should. Yes.
Okay, but do you believe in universal background checks?
No.
Why not?
Because they don't stop killers.
But why do you, like, some people who buy them, like, through private party sellers and they don't go through background checks, you don't think they go on to commit crimes, or they do, you know, these straw purchases where they sell off to, you know, gang members and things like that?
Well, see, they're already committing what you described. They're already committing felonies. A straw purchase is already a crime. So the people, even if they pass a background check, if they're intent on doing evil, they're going to do evil.
Sure. So do you think
criminals are going to be criminals?
So do you think we should put limits on how many guns you can buy, let's say, in like a month, like maybe 3 guns in a month? And so these people who go out and buy like 60 guns in one purchase and then go sell them out in the street, shouldn't we try to limit that?
again, they're breaking the law if they buy 60 guns and sell them out in the street.
Sure, but the thing is, they're still
what you're
still able to
describing
buy it under the law. They're able to buy 60 guns, and then they can break the law later. But why don't we preemptively try to stop that by limiting it to like 3 guns in a month?
Because you're infringing on my rights as a lawful gun owner, and I'm not going to go out and sell my guns to some criminal.
But you're still able to buy guns. You can buy 3 guns. Why would you need more than 3 guns in a month?
Because it's the Bill of Rights, it's not the Bill of Needs.
Sure, but it's not unlimited, right? You can't go scream fire in a crowded theater and things like that, right?
I got that, but my purchase of a lawful firearm is not infringing on anybody else's rights. It's only when I sell it unlawfully that it's infringing on somebody else's rights.
Sure, but
then I'm already
as an individual, perhaps, but in society at large, these kinds of like little things that could be tweaked could potentially save lives, right?
I think the biggest thing to save lives would be do something about the mental health situation in our country. I mean, we used to take people that were mentally ill and put them in facilities, and we don't do that anymore. You know, we drug our kids, you know, with a bunch of second-packing drugs and everything, and then we wonder why they act up. You know, we didn't have this 50 years ago. What's changed? There was just as many guns. There's just as many people owning guns back then. What changed in those 50 years?
So we obviously have so much more of a higher, you know, murder rate per capita and just overall as well than compared to these other industrialized countries that are similar to ours. But the only difference seems to be like the amount of gun ownership. How come, you know, the UK, for example, has so much less murders than we do, and they have strict gun control? So there's something related.
Actually, they don't. If you go back and look at their statistics, in the last couple of years, their homicide rate has jumped 42%.
That's not true.
Yeah, it is.
Not compared to where it was before the gun laws. For example, it had a slight increase after they passed the gun laws, but then it dipped down eventually and went below those numbers.
Yeah, and the killings with other weapons, knives, hammers, and stuff has gone up.
Yeah, but it's not even close to our murder rate.
Okay.
It's still under like 1 per 100,000. We're like over 4.
Okay, what do you want me to tell you?
I mean, isn't that, I mean, you know, other countries, they have less guns, they have stricter laws, but they have lower homicide rates. Why shouldn't we follow that model?
Because that's not a model that works for us. I mean, we allow guns, we allow freedom. The Second Amendment guarantees the freedom here. I mean, it's ironic that everybody here wants to ban a gun and they're protected by people with guns. There's a guy with a gun, there's a lady with a gun, there's another lady with a gun.
Yeah, I don't think they necessarily disagree that police should have firearms, for example. I think most people would say we support armed police officers, armed military, but they don't want it in the hands of civilians, or they just want stricter limits, for example.
Right. So when you leave here and you're parked in a funky part of the city and some guy attacks you, you're going to call a cop. By then it's done.
Yeah, I don't.
You know, but saying, you know, when seconds count, the police are minutes away.
And I think what they would say is if we had a society just filled with armed people, there would just be more shootings.
Now, go out and look at the rest of the states around here. Virginia, not as bad as Maryland. Maryland has some of the strictest gun laws in the country, and Virginia has many less gun deaths, you know, deaths at the hands of violent people using guns than Maryland does.
Yeah, but they have higher suicide rates by gun.
You can't stop people from doing what they're going to do. If the guns are banned, they're going to do it with knives, they're going to do it with rope, they're going to do it with string. You know, they're going to jump off bridges.
Anything else you'd like to add?
God bless America.
So why are we out here today?
I'm out here today to support gun reform. I think we need common sense laws. I think we need universal background checks. And I definitely think that we need to ban all assault rifles. They have no business on our streets. I would like to support the Pride Fund to end gun violence. We are a political action committee. We are working to elect Democrats that are pro-LGBTQ and anti-gun violence. And it's a really important cause. I'm out here today to support them, and I'm here today to support all the students. I'm out here today to fight for what I believe is right.
Sure, and you have this sign that says, you know, you don't get a gun, you don't get a gun, kind of like the Oprah thing, and nobody gets a gun. Do you believe nobody should have guns?
Personally, I believe some guns are okay for hunting, and I believe police officers should have guns, but in my personal opinion, I believe we need as few guns as possible to working towards an ultimate peace. And in the end of the day, I don't think anyone should have a gun.
So you don't want anyone to have a gun then?
I think it's a change that we are working for very far in the future.
Sure, so like kind of a slippery slope, like work towards that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So like what kind of legislation are you supporting today and why?
I'm definitely supporting universal background checks. I don't think anyone should be allowed to have a gun without a background check. I don't think anyone should be allowed to have an assault rifle.
What do you mean assault rifle specifically? Like what is that?
I would say anything that has a magazine more than even 6 bullets, I don't think is necessary.
Well, I mean, that's like pretty much all handguns, right?
Yes, yeah, I don't know.
Do you think that would be constitutional, though, given like the Supreme Court decision?
I don't really care.
But it's kind of important if we're trying to achieve realistic policy, right?
Yes, I think that we need to be working towards even amending the Second Amendment to not to get rid of it, because I don't believe that no one should have a gun. I just do believe.
Well, you said you did. You said you don't want anyone to have a gun.
In the future, but it's a hard.
Why wouldn't you get rid of the Second Amendment? You like it? You would if you established a country, would you put that in there?
No, I would not.
So why not get rid of it?
I believe some people do want to hunt and there are cases where people.
The Second Amendment's not about hunting, right?
True.
It's about hunting, but it's also about self-defense. I mean.
No, I said the Second Amendment's not about hunting. Really.
Look. Imagine Imagine when the Second Amendment was written. It's about self-defense. It's about these people who had militias who needed to defend themselves, and they only had muskets. So imagine you're in the early 1700s.
Well, late 1700s.
Okay, yeah, late 1700s. I get my timelines confused. Okay, so you're in the late 1700s. They're getting these militias started. They're writing the Bill of Rights. They're giving us the Second Amendment. So think of that time set, but we're here. We have assault rifles now. We don't need them because when they wrote it, they only had muskets. Now,
well, does that apply to other amendments in the Constitution, like the First Amendment? Do we only do quill pens and stuff, or doesn't it apply to the internet and other?
We regulate the First Amendment. We do. We have regulations.
We regulate guns too.
Not enough. Exactly. Not nearly enough as we regulate the First Amendment.
Oh, we definitely more than the First Amendment.
Okay. For the first.
Because the First Amendment doesn't lead to the amount of deaths that the Second Amendment has. We need much more gun regulation in this country, and people will continue to die until we do so.
Think about it. You post something on Facebook saying, I am going to take my gun and shoot up the school. That's speech. Someone can come arrest you for that if they think that is a threat on my life. If I think that's a threat on my life, I can report you to police. Someone can come arrest you. That's speech. I can go, but say for a gun, I can go buy a gun and take that to my school.
Legally, you can take it to your school?
No. You can't legally, but...
Can you carry it here right now in Washington, D.C.?
No, but you can get arrested, but it's just so much, it's so much easier to do these, the ease.
Obviously, these are not law-abiding citizens, so it's not legal to bring these guns places, but they're going to do so anyways. And we need to work to against that. We need to have a universal background checks is one of the key issues. Having universal background checks is such an important thing.
So, what do you feel is the evidence that these laws would actually reduce the violence in society?
Well, what they said earlier on the screens, when we did have a ban on assault rifles, there was a lot less gun violence.
Yeah, but it was going down already, and it went down after the ban as well.
I still feel shortly after, years later, it has increased because people have access to assault rifles.
No, it kept going down pretty dramatically after 2004. There was maybe a recent spike in 2015, 2016-ish, but the overall trend has been down.
Okay, but still, there's still way too many guns. There's too many school shootings. It's very clear that we need this legislation.
So why are we out here today?
We're marching to try and end some gun violence, stop people from being murdered en masse.
Sure, and what are we trying to achieve?
Me personally, I'm trying to get the message out there that look, there's a middle ground that we can kind of meet in the middle. We don't have to take all the guns away, but we don't have to have everybody with a gun. That there are ways to stop school shootings that don't include having to harden schools and having to arm teachers and potentially prepare them for having to shoot their own students in order to stop people from dying by the dozen in school shootings.
I don't think anyone supports everyone having a gun, for example. I've never heard anyone say that.
Yeah, I would say that that's probably a fringe, but it's...
I don't even think fringe. I think most people would say prisoners shouldn't have guns, for example.
All right, I will concede that point, but man, I feel like I'm a lot closer to there are folks out there who are a lot closer to everybody than common sense.
I think they would say most people should be able to, I guess, because they think most people are good.
Yes, most people should have the ability to, and I think that a lot of my stance on gun control is to what extent are they able to own a firearm? What capabilities are they going to have with that firearm once they own it?
And what do you think like they shouldn't have or whatever? And
I really think that the way to get into a military style weapon, something that's patterned after military hardware, should be military service.
Sure, like what are you talking about exactly? Like which specific guns?
AR-15. That's something that shares almost an identical structure to the M16 and the M4.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the same function as it. Isn't that pretty important?
It's missing two functions, which is burst fire and fully automatic.
That's a pretty big function, wouldn't you say?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
It's like saying a function's like, well, the only difference is it can, like if you compare it to an airsoft gun. Well, the only difference is it can shoot real bullets. Like
exactly, it's one difference, but it makes so much of a difference.
I agree.
That I think that it needs to be a lot more regulated than it is. I don't think it should be impossible to get this, but I honestly believe that. That our laws are way too lax, that that's way too easy for people who I honestly wouldn't trust with a freaking butter knife to get something that's not a weapon of war, but it is one step down from a weapon of war, and something that you can buy an accessory for what? How much does a bump stock cost? A couple $100? You don't have to do any background check. You don't have to prove that you're not going to use it. Because with fully automatic weapons that fire at the same number of rounds per minute, you have to get your tax stamp, you have to do background checks. There's a very rigorous process for getting these weapons. But a bump stock, you can get online and get shipped to you just like the Amazon Prime of firearms.
I mean, how many times have they been used in mass shootings, for example?
Well, there was the Las Vegas shooting.
That's about it.
That's about it, but is one not enough?
I mean, but does it necessarily make it more deadly? Because those things don't make you really accurate. He probably would have killed more people if he picked his shots. Okay,
well let me phrase it like this: if someone walks into my school, if someone walks into my hallway and knocks on my door, I'm still going to bum rush the guy with the bump stock. I'm still going to be swinging at him, but I like my odds a lot better if he's rocking something like a Mosin Nagant, where he's got to pull the bolt back for each round. I want to make that fucker work for his murders. I want to make it as difficult to murder a bunch of people as possible. There was a dude recently in the Netherlands, strict gun control laws. He tried to go into a school. He was mentally disturbed. The only thing he had access to was a bunch of knives. The students were able to scare him away with their backpacks. They threw their backpacks at him. If I threw my backpack at a guy with an AR-15, he would laugh and shoot me in the face. Yeah. That's the big difference there. I want to make it difficult.
Well, I mean, obviously, we've had mass shootings in places that have strict gun control. The deadliest ones aren't even in the United States. They're in France, for example, even Norway, both of which have higher deaths from mass shootings per capita than the United States.
And that, I would argue, especially like if you look at the Charlie Hebdo, that was organized. That was multiple people. That was, I don't want to use the word amateur and professional, but that was more organized. It wasn't just some lone wolf nut job. It was truly.
So, but I mean, the gun control laws didn't help in that case, and they were using fully automatic weapons. So.
Yeah, they didn't. But I mean, obviously, bad guys are always going to be able to get their hands on guns. I'm not saying that anything that I'm suggesting will make it impossible, but let's make it difficult. Let's make it hard on these guys. Let's make them work for it.
But the problem is, it could also hurt law-abiding citizens who want to own these things and have the right to own these things. There's not just all benefit. There's also a cost.
There is a cost, but that's the thing. The cost to law-abiding citizens to maybe protect themselves. I mean, we could talk for a really long time on the statistics of good guys with guns. I think it's it's not necessarily a complete fabrication, but there is a little bit of mythology. There's a little bit of.
Well, it's definitely more common that people defend themselves with guns than there are mass shootings, for example.
This is true, but
probably way more lives saved from defensive gun uses than there are people who die in mass shootings.
I disagree with that.
Well, I mean, we have like a lot of, we have statistical data behind this. CDC estimates anywhere between 500,000 and 3 million defensive gun uses per year. Even if we take 1% of 1% of that, that's way more than all the mass shooting deaths, for example.
True. Although, mass shootings, they're preventable. Other countries with stricter gun control, but still with access to firearms, have a fraction of the gun deaths from mass shootings and from this.
Not per capita, not necessarily like France and Norway, like I was saying before. But I mean, when you look at, for example, it's not best to compare country to country as far as overall murders. It's best to compare the country to itself when they had gun control laws and when they didn't have gun control laws. And usually what you see is when they had no gun control laws, they had less murders per capita. So isn't this more of a bigger issue of like, there's other factors rather than the guns. Guns are probably honestly a small thing. Like if for example, drug laws probably contribute more to the murders in this country and gang violence than gun control laws could contribute at all.
Obviously, mental health plays a role, but let's make it. Let's go back to that easy, difficult thing. Banning assault weapons is simple. It's easy. You vote in legislators.
Is it easy though? Like let's say you ban them. Are you just banning?
Functionally speaking, it's a lot easier to pass a law that just says, "Hey, look, you can't make, sell, distribute, use, own." It's
own.
Really,
so would you do confiscation? And is that easy? And couldn't that possibly lead to more violence? People who are very passionate.
It could, and I think that it would be very, very difficult to enforce. My personal stance is that. That current owners should be grandfathered in, and I honestly believe that it should be restricted much the same way that the 1980 the automatic weapons ban in the 1980s. What was that?
Yeah, that was the 1986. They passed the Hughes Amendment to the Firearm Owners Protection Act,
and that made it so that it was very difficult to transfer the fully automatic weapons.
No. That was in 1934. They did that, but then 1986 they said no new ones could be manufactured for civilian use.
Right, and it's very difficult to transfer these fully automatic weapons. I honestly believe that you should still have that freedom, but I think that it should be very well watched, that it should be very well regulated, and that I think we should make sure that it's safe.
Doesn't that create also it's kind of like discriminatory against the people who can't afford it, because like those fully automatic weapons that are because the supply is so low and demand is fairly high, the prices of those like $20,000 each. So doesn't that kind of discriminate against the poor people, or do they not have rights to own guns, especially under the Second Amendment? You actually have a sign here. You said
regulated.
Yeah. So what about that?
I mean, it's very simple. We're proposing regulations, and I honestly think that we can regulate this without infringing.
You think the Second Amendment, when it said well-regulated, it means regulation the way we think about it today as far as controlling things?
We want to thank the department students. We want to let them know that.
That's actually a really good question.
It doesn't. I can tell you that.
Yeah,
it meant like a well-trained, well-armed, well-prepared.
Yeah, but that emphasis on the well-prepared. Good friend of mine.
So what does the Second Amendment say, though? It doesn't say people in the militia. What does it say?
Let's see. Let's see if I can remember.
I got it memorized. So go ahead.
All right. A well-regulated militia.
Mr. Trump, Congress, the Senate, and all elected
being necessary to the
security of the people's rights.
No, being necessary to the security of a free state.
Of the free state, and the rights to bear arms should not be infringed.
No, the right of the people to keep and bear
arms should not be infringed. God, man, you really had to walk me through that. In my defense, I looked this up at 3 in the morning just to get the wording right.
So it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the operative clause. The prefatory clause states that a militia is necessary to the security of a free state. So it states something that's, it's saying, yeah, militias are necessary to secure a free state. Of course, we fought a war for 2 years against a tyrannical state militia. Now, to secure that, we want to give the right to the people to keep and bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed. It's going on a little bit long, but is there anything you'd like to add?
This song is not only good.
Nope, I think we covered it all. Thank you so much
for coming
all
up.
the good questions.
Yeah, for sure.
You really made me think.
Yeah, I'm glad.
You can't just retweet. You can't just Facebook post. That's social media. Get up, be proactive, and move.
So, what kind of policy specifically, though?
Okay, gun policies, gun laws. Get rid of them. We cannot
get rid of gun laws?
No, keep gun laws, but get rid of guns. You know what I mean? I'm angry right now. But get rid of guns. This whole thing, background checks for guns, people can get guns too easily now.
So just create a law banning all guns?
I think we should ban guns. I'm not for guns at all. I'm really not.
So why do you feel like that would reduce overall like murder or death in this country?
I don't think that it would probably reduce everything, but it probably sure would help. It's a start. It's a step.
What's your evidence for that?
My evidence? My evidence is the stuff that I've been through. I'm from New Orleans. I've lost cousins to gun violence. I've seen when it happens in neighborhoods. I know what it does. It has to go.
That's what guns do, like people with guns, but how does the law actually, like if you ban guns, why do you feel like that would achieve that?
I feel like, I mean, people are gonna still try to get guns, but I feel like it'll prevent them. It'll make it harder for people to get guns. They do these background checks for certain people. They need to be more strict about their background checks. They can't just hand out guns. Guns are too easily given out now, and we have to put a stop to that.
So do you feel like in places where they have stricter gun laws that there would be less murders than in places where there's
I think so.
Well, like Chicago, for example, has really strict gun laws, but it has almost the highest murder rate in the entire country.
It's second under New Orleans, where I'm from.
Exactly.
We're number 2. And I think that has to do with the way that they're going about the policies. They're giving guns and allowing guns. It's easier to get a gun in a black neighborhood than it is to get in another neighborhood, right? Why do they have that? They want the crime to stay up in that neighborhood or what?
Who's they?
The government.
The government wants more guns in the hands of black communities?
I think so. It keeps us in jail more. What do you think?
So, I mean, the thing is, like, the 2 safest states in the entire country are New Hampshire and Vermont, and they have the least restrictive gun control laws in the country. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I don't know anything about New Hampshire or anything. You just educated me on something. I'm going to have to look it up. All I know is what I've been through, what I've seen in my city, and it has to stop. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, we see in other places, the stricter gun law places, they tend to have higher rates of murders than places that have less strict gun laws. Like even in the UK, where everyone's like, well, you know, these other countries, they have way stricter gun laws, but they have less murders than the United States. Well, before they passed those gun control laws, they actually had less murders than they did afterwards. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. Right now, that's not what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is our kids.
I know, but if the thing is, if we pass these laws and if, let's say, it leads to an increase, isn't that a net negative thing if we're trying to save people's lives?
We don't know. We can't answer that. We can only see and try. We can see the effect.
We have tried. And we've seen what happens in these situations.
Well, if it's that, we're gonna do it now. Then, if it's gonna hurt, then let's see if it works. I don't know.
So you want to take the chance that it might actually hurt more people?
We don't know. We have to see.
But we have seen it. We've seen it happen in the past, like over and over and over again. It repeats itself in this sort of way.
Well, history repeats itself, but we have to make a stop to it, don't it? If this is gonna make us,
if history repeats itself, if we continue to repeat the mistakes of the past.
No, what interview is this, bro? Don't interview me.
Okay, no worries. All good. Thank you. All right, guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Support me on Patreon. Social media links are in the description box below. And thanks for tuning in for another episode of Nuance. Bro!